Here we go. It is Chalk Talk with Chris Landry, the coach of LandryFootball.com. Check out that website, former NFL coach and former college scout as well. You'll get inside info that is fantastic, and it's brought to you by Owl's Nest Barbecue and Steve Ray's Midnight Oil, a proud Michelin distributor. And man, I'll tell you more about Owl's Nest Barbecue, but what you get, as much as anything, expertise. They'll point you in the right direction to get the sauces and the rubs and even the grills you need. But Chris, it is National Signing Day for those that are just tuning in. National Signing Day isn't quite like it used to be. It used to be frantic and there were uncommitted guys, and it seems to settle before noon. I can remember being up at 7 or 8 o'clock at night calling a Julian battle, if you want to go way back in the day. But that's not really the case anymore. There are four guys that Tennessee brought into the fold that I want to focus on. Three are signees, and they're not surprises, but I want to get your scouting view of them. And then one is a transfer that is a bit of a surprise. But you and I have talked a lot about the prospects, but Shadavion Bradley, we haven't talked a lot about. There's a guy that Tennessee certainly expects to have an impact sooner rather than later. When you see tape, what do you think of Shadavion?
Well, he's a lean, long, athletic guy with a lot of upside. Um, he remind me a little bit of the kid that played at Miami, Rousseau. But he probably needs to put on about 15, 20 good pounds. I mean, he's at this point, from what I understand, he's about 210 ish, 215 ish. But a lot of upside. I mean, he's very twitchy, very athletic, very quick off the ball, very fluid, can bend, and very difficult to block. He's been a stand-up rusher, and I imagine that's where they're going to play him. I think he can play weak side, defensive end, but with his hands down, he's going to have to get stronger and he's going to have to get bigger. Um, so I think he's a really good looking player. I think I'm curious to see where he comes in weight wise. I remember him being a little undersized. Now, my guess is he's probably uh, into the 220 ish range now. But he's got some ways to fill out that frame, but I really like him athletically.
Please hit that like button so we can be a part of your day-to-day Tennessee coverage. And it's brought to you by Owl's Nest Barbecue. Those Green Mountain grills are absolutely fantastic. And Chris, another defensive lineman. I want to focus on these four defensive players, and then we'll visit with some about some offensive players down the line. It's all on the YouTube channel, Off the Hook Sports. But Tyree Weathersby, another defensive lineman. What do you think of him?
Yeah, he's the kid, obviously, from Douglasville, Georgia. Really good looking player. Athletically, he's a little bit bigger and he moves pretty well. He's played some at tight end as well, and you see some of the athleticism there. He lines up mostly in a four technique, 4-eye, five technique. He can be a guy that can play either in a 3-4 front and 3-4 looks, and then obviously I think can be a left end at the next level. A good player, a little bit bigger and stronger at the point of attack, and um, I think that he's got that not as twitchy, but as I think a good natural uh, can convert quickness to power type of guy. I think he plays with heavy hands, does a good job getting his hands in the throwing lane. So a good player there. I think a guy that I think's got some growth and development, but he's a kind of a what I would call a lower to mid 4-star guy that's got some qualities to develop at the next level. They need a good complement of guys that can maybe grow, and I think he has the potential to grow into maybe being an interior guy, but I see him more as a kind of a left end type of guy in their scene.
And then Caleb Herring, here's a guy who's from Murfreesboro. His brother plays for Tennessee, so I don't think it was any shock that Tennessee got him. But sometimes I think fans just overlook the ones that are easy to get. But he's a guy that, with size and speed, I would think as well. Most recruiting services have him as a 4-star. Talking about a pretty good defensive end edge rusher, I would think, to go along with the other guys we've already talked about.
Yeah, he's one of those like the aforementioned that the athletic, long 6'5", that needs to, maybe 210, 212 ish, with the potential to be like that 235, 240-pound guy in time with good weight potential. He's got that basketball looking type body at this point. Really good athletic edge player. Um, Looks more like an off the ball linebacker that can grow into a guy that can play down, and I think can rush the passer and nickel. Good first step. Will play a little high at times. We'll have to kind of learn how to play with his pads a little bit better, but he really has got good speed and good quickness. Can bend very well. He comes off high, but he can bend, and he'll learn from a technique standpoint how to be able to play the position. What I like is that, he's got natural speed, but once he learns how to rush the passer and he can work his counter move, he's going to be really a better player at the next level because his natural speed is something you just can't teach. He's got, decent hand usage. I think his play strength at the point of attack's pretty decent. And look, I think to me, I see him as an outside stand-up outside backer, and that can be a really good player. So we're talking about two guys that are two good edge players that's got some room to grow and develop, that I think are high level players right there in Murfreesboro.
And I know that everybody was talking about a quarterback coming in for the Vols in the transfer portal to bridge the gap, but because a lot of Tennessee fans, I know you're not in this area, but a lot of Tennessee fans are not very high on Joe Milton III. But they didn't go that direction so far. They still could, but they kind of surprised us a little bit with Keenan Pili, a linebacker out of BYU. Now he missed the last 9 games with an injury, but you've seen him. What do you think he brings to Tennessee?
Yeah, he's a true, linebacker. He's a 235-pound guy, and he's a guy that was kind of a late bloomer as a prospect. He wasn't real twitchy, overly athletic. He's strong. He's very good at the point of attack. He's high effort, high motor guy, team leader type guy. So he's a guy that, he's gotten a little bit better. They obviously preach and teach toughness over there. So they've got them a guy that can be a true off the ball linebacker that can really help them. That's got some playing ability. Your point on the quarterback, just to not to jump off on that, but I think it's really important is you got to find the right guy. I think you can go in and say you need one, but I think they're looking for the right guy, and I think they've had some interest. But I think that we've talked about it. There's maybe better options for some of the key ones that I think that would have been candidates. It looks like there were better options for those guys maybe at other places to go in and play immediately. So, yeah, I still think the right guy they'd bring in. I just don't think that right guy is there at this point. And I've seen a few of them, go elsewhere. But to do what they want, I think they've got to find that right niche. And as you mentioned, it's not over yet. This transfer portal stuff is evolving, and we still don't know who's going to end up in the portal yet.
Hit that thumbs up button like this as we break down Tennessee's class. We'll continue with this series of videos throughout the transfer portal period. It still sounds weird to me, not just to say National Signing Day on the first Wednesday in February, but I've got to adjust. When we talk about the right quarterback transferring in, Chris, I'm sorry as I may sneeze here. It's so funny. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, if I would have told you, Chris, as a college coach, here's your quarterback room. You've got a 5-star incoming freshman. You've got a guy that you really like that will be a sophomore this year. And you've got a guy with playing experience that can throw the ball about 75 yards. Back in the day, that would have been a heck of a quarterback room. Now, though, it's all about next year and what's happening, and that might not be enough. I mean, we'll see what happens. It's just funny how times change.
Yeah, well, in the old days, you knew what you had and you knew what you were going to continue to have. Right now, you don't know what the future's going to bring. So, you look at that and it looks good. One gets injured, one leaves, and then what do you have? And I think you have to look at it from that viewpoint of that's why it's, maybe not a desperation. We need to go get the best guy we can find. I think they're looking for the guy that what if they they have to have a guy that can compete and play this year and be real productive. Having a guy that they're bringing in that has a lot of potential, but they don't know that he's ready, and they don't. I mean, whether he will or he won't, you don't know that. There's no way to know that.
It doesn't
Then you got
matter.
to
It doesn't matter if they have 7 stars.
That's correct. And then you got another guy that you think's got potential. You basically got one guy that you're counting on that's got some enough playing experience that you're ready to go with. The one guy. And you mentioned, I think that the coaches, some of them, they like Joe Milton. I think that they're not comfortable with saying this is all we're going to go with, because even if he turns out to be really, really good and a lot better, what happens if he gets injured? Then where do you go? Then you're playing somebody that you're not quite ready with, and then if you don't get somebody, and then one of those guys are going to have to be ready, and you're going to have to make it work. But it's not necessarily where you want to go in at this point, because you just don't know. And as far as you used to talk about, well, we've got we got Nico. Okay, well, okay. What if Nico doesn't pan out as well? What if he does, and something happens? It's not from here. Everything is great. What if he leaves? In a year, then what do you have? You can't, in the position you're in as a coach in this day and age, you can't put all your eggs in a one player basket. You have to be able to spread it around. You have to have options, because no one's going to say, if Nico plays great and something happens and he goes somewhere else, then where's your future? I mean, you've got to constantly work that room like every other position, but that room is different. It's unique. It's the one that's the most volatile. And I was looking it up and talking with somebody. You realize now, basically, we're at the stage where today, in signing day, of the top 300 to 500 players that sign, a lot of them, 30% of them are going to transfer. That's what we now know. That's based upon, that's what we can expect. Well, you're constantly looking at that. And so, as I said, who's in the portal now, who's in the recruiting class. But in terms of the portal, you don't want to go and just get somebody for another body in the room. They're not looking for another body in the room. They're looking for the right guy. And maybe, there's 2 or 3 guys that were the right guy, but they maybe want to go somewhere else. Well, you don't know what a week from now who's going to jump in that portal that might be a fit. So it's not over. You have to constantly be studying it, and it's a challenge. It is. The conversations are almost endless on what you have to currently do in today's system, and it's so imperative at the quarterback position. And on top of that, I would say even more important for Tennessee, meaning this is not a program that's built as a power team that can take a quarterback. They're not Georgia, where, okay, you got Stetson Bennett, who's developed and who's become a really good player. And I'm not shortchanging that young man. He's done a great job, and he was made a trip to the high. He's not even the best offensive player on their team.
No.
And, he certainly wasn't the most physically gifted. But that's a great football team and a good quarterback that's really helped them. This is not what Tennessee's all about. They are going to live and die with their quarterback more than a Georgia might. So that just makes it all the more important that you have, as we like to call, a spare and a pair and a spare. You better have like 3 guys ready at all times to be able to go and you're comfortable with, and you're not going to be comfortable, every week with starting 3 guys, because you can't give them all starting reps. But If one goes down, you got to be ready to go, or else you go from, yeah, we can compete and be a 10-win team, or we're going to be a 6-win team. That just doesn't fly in today's world, and you got to be prepared accordingly.
Agreed. Chris Landry of LandryFootball.com. Get to that website now. Hit that like button, and we'll continue to break down Tennessee's signing class in the coming days and weeks, as might even have a quarterback to talk to. We'll see. That's Chalk Talk with Chris Landry. I'm Dave Hooker, a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.